he's our shepherd, and we're his flock. Now he's our captain, and our ship's about to dock.
So I'm going to take a few minutes out of the beginning of this to talk about Ubisoft. Now I feel like a lot of people are harsh to Ubisoft, possibly overly harsh to Ubisoft. I don't think Ubisoft are that bad. Especially in recent years, they got into a point where they just made Assassin's Creed over and over and over and over and over until we got to Unity, I think, is where it stopped. And we're like, guys, no way, might have been the one in London, Syndicate. It's like they took all of the ideas for Assassin's Creed games that had been suggested to them, and they just took them and they thought, let's just do... Oh, that's a creaky chair. And they thought, let's just do them one after the other, after the other, after the other, until we run out of ideas. And then they did. After Assassin's Creed Syndicate, they were like, wow, let's do one in industrial era London. That would be fun, but let's put no effort into it. Let's just make it the same as the last 7. And I think they felt a little guilty about this. That's why none of these games had numbers. Rogue had an okay idea, but gameplay wasn't there. All of them, the bad ones, had these great ideas, but the gameplay was always just the same thing over and over. There was Rogue, there was Syndicate, Unity. 3 wasn't great. 4 had the boat thing, and the fact you could dual wield swords. But other than that, it was okay at best. And most of them don't have numbers. Most of them don't have any link back to the real world. After 4 has a link back. 4 has a link back to the real world, but then after that they sort of don't at all. But there are a couple of places here or there. Syndicate had the World War 1 or 2 second, DLC, I think it was. That was fun. But then Ubisoft took some time, especially after what happened with Watch Dogs 1. We don't talk about Watch Dogs 1. Especially after what happened with Watch Dogs 1. We don't talk about Watch Dogs 1. Now you'll notice I don't have my pop filter because I have nowhere to put it here. Fight me. So it all started looking up around about the time that Ubisoft released Watch Dogs 2. I really liked Watch Dogs 2. I thought Watch Dogs 2 was a really solid game. The gameplay was really fun and open-ended. The real negative was the story. I was thinking, don't worry guys, they'll get it better next time. And then I skipped out on a few of the major Ubisoft titles. The next one I played was Assassin's Creed Origins. And I really loved the change to more of an RPG setup, where sort of you could select weapons, you could select outfits, you could select a bunch of different ways you could customize yourself, make yourself feel unique. But again, story elements weren't quite there. There was a kind of interesting story things. There were interesting things with Egyptian mythology. Egyptian mythology is always interesting. IMO. But the problem is that the actual characters and story weren't very good. Other than that, I mentioned this in my last video where I say that I don't have anything to review like I done this week, so I'm going to review a game that I played this week. But Assassin's Creed Origins has some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard. Now Ubisoft almost always, especially in Assassin's Creed, have terrible voice acting, except for the main characters. And this is no exception. If you do any of the side missions, not only will the side missions be boring and comprised of one of 3 things, no, they'll always be the same thing, actually, just with a slightly different end. The side missions will be go to area, use bird to find a thing, and then either pick thing up or fight a bunch of guys, kill a bunch of guys. And it just got really tedious, and it didn't even have good stories to surround it. So Ubisoft has been looking up. They've been trying to improve themselves. I'd say that recently Ubisoft's been one of the more solid big game companies, you know? I'd take Ubisoft over EA any day. I think anyone would, honestly. EA is just the worst. The point is, the Far Cry has always been one of their IPs that they always like to go outside the box on. You know, like to go totally crazy. And that's why, you already know what this is a review of. This is Far Cry 5 review. Baby. So what did I think? Well, let me continue the Ubisoft story. Again, starting with Far Cry 3, they've started really... They kind of found a formula in Far Cry 3. And Far Cry 3 was made around the same time the Ubisoft were falling into their bad zone, where they started making the same Assassin's Creed game. And they did the same with Far Cry. Far Cry 4 was just a worse version of Far Cry 3, and a lot of people say it was just the same as Far Cry 3. I say it was worse, and not only because it was the same, but also because it ruined certain things. It didn't add things that, you know, should have been good, like the grappling was good, but the wingsuit was just non-functional. There were so few times that it was actually the most effective way to do something, that there was just no point in having it, and you forgot that it existed, so you didn't use it when it was the most effective thing. Other than that, they ruined driving. I played Far Cry 4 on the PS4. The driving just sucked, because they had the exact same driving system for Far Cry 3, except the map in Far Cry 4 is a lot more dense. In Far Cry 3 there are a lot of wide open areas where you could drive around, a lot of wide open roads. In Far Cry 4 the roads are much narrow. There's a lot more trees about. You feel me? So you're crashing a lot more, you know, it's just tedious. So you run out of the car, you think, I'll use my wingsuit. You jump off a little hill, can't use a wingsuit off a little hill. Oh, I guess I'll just walk then. That's boring. So you end up just not playing the game. Which I didn't. It took me like 4 months to finish Far Cry 4 because I just didn't want to play it. Because it just wasn't fun for me. Especially after the masterpiece that was Far Cry 3. Because that was great. That was my first Far Cry game. It was one of my first big games when I started getting into gaming. Being a gamer girl that I am. And then Far Cry Primal. Well, of course, there was Far Cry Blood Dragon, which was amazing, but it was just a mod for Far Cry 3. But then Far Cry Primal. And Far Cry Primal was just a mod for Far Cry 4, except Far Cry Blood Dragon didn't take anything away from the core experience of Far Cry 3. It just changed the way things look, changed some voice lines, changed enough to make it fun and goofy. Far Cry Primal just took things away from Far Cry 4. It took away all the guns, took away all the wingsuit, and I think it might.
Point is, Far Cry Primal I found hideous, extremely boring. But ironically, Far Cry Primal actually has some decent story elements. Which is... they can't do both. So I was wondering with this new one, what are they going to do? And then, I slowly started releasing adverts, and it was the same kind of charismatic dictator kind of character. I was thinking, okie dokie, it'll just be the same thing. At least it'll have fun gameplay because it's Far Cry. So now to the main portion of the review. The game is fun. But what about it is fun? In terms of gameplay, yeah, the gunplay is really solid, feels really satisfying. Enemies go down in what I'd call a realistic-ish way, but it's still satisfying. And it feels not necessarily easy, but again, realistic, quote-unquote. It's not a challenging game by any means. There were certain areas where I died lots, but that was mostly because they just shove loads of enemies into one area, and it just sort of, good luck, fella.
Hey, why don't you get to the review?
Wow, that's a great idea. Driving. They fixed the driving. In fact, driving around in this game really gave me heavy vibes of Dying Light the Following. If you play Dying Light the Following, you'll have very similar driving around in like farmland with loads of trees. Sort of, it's very similar vibes, very similar colours. Very similar everything, really, in terms of how it feels. One thing I'd say that this does that even other Far Cry games haven't been able to champion, that Ubisoft never champions, because Ubisoft has the worst side missions in AAA game. As a fact that you can fight me on, but I will win.
But this game's side missions are genuinely fun. You got one called the Testy Festi, where you gotta prepare for a testicle festival, and then you do it, and then you wake up in a field and there's pigs. That's fun. You got one with aliens. There's alien stuff going on here. You got some you meet a CIA agent who wants you to get a P-tape, water sports tape. You got a, and it's just, it's so fun. The main story kind of is a bit at odds with the actual gameplay. The open world, I mean. The story missions and the open world don't gel for me. Like, you'll go from getting this truck with guns on it that has pictures of bald eagles on it and an American flag is like purple, and doing these clutch Nixon events where you have to replicate these crazy stunt routines that a famous stuntman did. And then you go to this serious sort of, gotta take down the cult story missions. And the story missions are pretty good. I've seen some people complain about the boss fights. I don't mind it. Honestly, I thought they were suitable boss fights. They changed things up from the main gameplay without taking anything away from the player. And it felt fair. That's all I asked for a boss fight. But And generally, the story elements are kind of... I mean, they're okay, but they just don't feel that different from other Far Cry games. The saving grace in terms of the story is the way that everything's structured in the map. The map is split up into 3 sections. And these sections are all led by one person each. And I'll tell you what, there was a point in the game, the first one I did was John Seed's area, the area that John Seed runs. I forget the names of the areas. But I started doing that, and I was doing that for like 4 hours. You know, I did his thing. And then I got to the point where I was able to take him on, and I went to him, and I fought him, and I beat him, and then all this stuff was happening. And then there were cutscenes, and I was like, wow, what a satisfying ending to the game. Wow, I'm ready to make my review now. And then I realized that there was still 2/3 of the game left. What I'm trying to say is that each of these thirds, to me, felt like its own Far Cry game, with its own Far Cry villain, you know? And they were great, they all had, they were all relatively unique, while still being very Far Cry, very much the charismatic leader type. But they were unique enough. You know, you had John, who is, I felt he was a bit cowardly, I felt John was. John was kind of the least interesting one. But the set pieces and cutscenes and gameplay surrounding him were very fun. Including one of my favourite side missions of all time, the Nick Rye side mission, where you get Nick Rye on your side. That was just phenomenal. Going from his place to the place where you gotta get his plane, and then back, and then the preceding fight, all the enemy placements were perfect. Everything was so streamlined in that mission. It's one of the best side missions I've ever played. Side note there. Well, the problem that's been stated by other people before me is Joseph Seed himself, the main big bad guy, that was even the main big bad guy of the live-action short on Amazon Prime Video. He's not in the game that much. He shows up once in John's story, once in Faith's story, and a couple other times. And then you only see him at the end. He's at the beginning, of course. So he kind of felt like a bit of a weak link. On that, set pieces and cutscenes around this game, phenomenal. Loved them. People complained that the Far Cry is overusing the whole trippy dream sequences, hallucination sequences. I really like dream sequences. I'm a sucker for dream sequences. Seriously, just give me any dream sequence, no matter how simplistic. I'll be like, wow, that's great. I love that. I'm a real dweeb like that. But okay, going into spoiler talk now. So if you don't want spoiler talk, just go to the timestamp right here, and you'll be able to not get spoiled. Waiting for people to click the timestamp right here. Okay, cool. So, I feel like I'm gonna have the unpopular opinion when it comes to the ending of this game. Now, Far Cry's endings are always a bit risky, bit on edge. I remember, the ending of Far Cry 3 was a bit, those decisions are unfair, they're bad either way, they're good either way. I thought the ending of Far Cry 3 was kind of, it didn't really affect me that much, but I was young when I played it. But the ending of this game, I feel like a lot of people won't like it. It kind of, it's very permanent ending. And even there's 3 endings. There's one that happens in the first 10 minutes, and then there's 2 that happen at the end of the game. The first one, you just don't try and take him, and then you leave, and then credits roll, and that's the end of the game. And it happens in like first cutscene. It's kind of clever actually. They did the same thing in Far Cry 4, I believe. But then the other 2 endings are at the end of the campaign. You got Joseph Seed, and you have to decide. He's got all your friends trapped. You've got to decide whether you want to leave or fight him. If you fight him, he will set your friends on you, and you gotta hurt your friends. That's not nice. If you leave, he poisons you and you die. But how obviously the true ending is fighting him. You know, you gotta fight your friends, then revive them, and you can have your friends on your side. It's a good ending. It's a good way to sort of cement these relationships you have with the people, or at least I think that's what they're trying to go with. It doesn't quite work out that way. It kind of just feels like I'm fighting people and then reviving them to have them on my side. But you know, it worked. It did its job, I guess. But then, what happens is you cuff the father, and he sets off a nuclear bomb. 2 nuclear bombs, I think. And then you try and outrun the nuclear bomb and go to a nuclear fallout shelter because there's a bunch of people called preppers, you know, doomsday preppers, in Hope County. But you crash into a tree and you end up in there with just Joseph Seed, and he kills the owner of the bunker, and it's just you and him alone. And he says you are his flock now. You are the only member of his flock, and that he was right all along. I thought it was a real ballsy ending, because it's not a good ending. It's not a happy ending. In fact, it's the worst possible ending. But the reason I like it is because it's the ending that the entire narrative of the game was preparing you for. You know, when you fight John, he says, "Have you ever considered that maybe he's right?" When you fight the ginger one that looks like the guy from Ex Machina, he says, "You don't understand." Yeah, well, he says some other things too, but I didn't memorize the whole script of this game. Cut me some slack. And when you fight Faith, she's just afraid. She's just kind of afraid. The point is, little things here and there throughout the narrative, throughout the story missions, pull you closer and sort of hint towards this ending. I was thinking all the way through the game about what I'd say in this video. I was thinking, you know, they'll probably go for something, you know, you kill Joseph Seed, you arrest Joseph Seed, and you see him driving away, and you go, "Oh," and he goes, "I could have done it if it wasn't for you and your guns." I could have done it if it wasn't for you meddling kids and your guns. But I was thinking, that's how it's going to end. So what I'll probably say in the video is I'll probably say something like, you know, they could have been more risky. You know, they could have gone all out and maybe had it so that he was right in the end, or something crazy like that. Or maybe have it so that the cultists were just defending themselves, because very clearly the cultists are aggressively trying to find you and kill you. But if they just change some of the way the NPCs behave so that they only fight really to capture you or in self-defense, then they could have pulled off they were just fighting in self-defense, but the cult isn't actually bad. They're just a weird, crazy cult. But then they went all out with this ending, and I like this ending. It's very sort of, it hits you, surprises you. You expect, just driving away from the nuclear explosion, you're thinking, how are they gonna get themselves out of this debacle? And they don't. And that's crazy, I think. And then from that point on, the backgrounds of the game are the same backgrounds. The backgrounds of the UI the same backgrounds as before, just destroyed. I think that's really powerful. And I think a lot of people won't like it, but I thought it was great. That's all I have to say about the ending. I did experience some bugs in this, but I did play it on the first 2 days that it was out. Literally from midnight the first day it was out to midnight the second day, and I finished it. And it was... There were no bugs that broke the game. No bugs that really... And I would say nothing that really took me out of the immersion. There were some things, but it's kind of... This Far Cry 5 is almost becoming like the Saints Row version of itself. You know how Saints Row was the Saints Row of GTA? Well, Far Cry 5 is like the Saints Row of Far Cry 3. It's a bit sillier, a bit wackier, a bit zanier. You know, the others were kind of zany, but this one's ultra zany. Not Saints Row zany, but it's getting there. I don't want it to become that. I want it to stay the course. Yeah, that kind of thing. Best new addition to this game is the Guns for Hire system. Being able to sort of, you're allowed up to, if you unlock all the correct perks, which I'll get onto in a minute, you're allowed to have up to 2 Guns for Hire, which are these people you can call in who help you out during a mission. And I found them super useful. Not just as companionship, but also, you know, in terms of utility. You know, there's a helicopter in the air and I don't have a rocket launcher or anything else that can take it down easily. Call in Herc, he's got a rocket launcher to take it out of a helicopter. But the most useful one by far that I found is Boomer. Boomer has the incredible ability of being a dog. Every game should have a dog. I'd say this whilst I was playing it. Every game should have a dog meat. Dog meat in Fallout 4 was the best companion. D-Dog in Metal Gear Solid 5 was the best companion. And now in Far Cry 5, the best companion is the dog Boomer. Every dog should have a dog meat. Every game should have a dog meat. Just all of them. I don't care what game it is, put a dog in it, it's better. It's infinitely better. But for reals, a dog meat has the ability to mark enemies that he can see. Yeah, normally in order to mark enemies you either have to look at them for a couple of seconds through your scope or your iron sights, or look at them through your binoculars. But Boomer, he can just do it. He's magic. And that is the most useful ability in the game, I'll tell you what. Jess was also very cool because she was a bow and arrow lady, and she could... I originally had Grace. She was very loud. You know, when she shoots people, very loud. Gives away her position. But Jess, silent. Quiet. Plus animals don't attack her, so that's useful. There were a bunch of other little things that I loved about this game, like the fact that you can throw your weapons. It was just such a simple thing, but it's so satisfying. Just little things like that really improve the experience. I think this is probably my favourite Far Cry game in a while. It's much better than Primal and 4. I didn't like those two games. And this is also another game that's indicative of Ubisoft's new approach towards their games. You know, this, way back in Watch Dogs 2, then Assassin's Creed Origins,
than this. I feel like Ubisoft are going in a good direction, creative direction, and I respect them for it. Side note, the season pass for this game looks amazing except the zombies thing, because there's already zombies in the main game, so what's the point? The aliens thing though, and the Vietnam thing, have real potential. As long as there's stuff that I can get in it that I can carry over to the main game. Love to see some alien weaponry in the main game, that would be rad. Or that I could carry over to the main game, that would be satisfying. But anyway, as usual,
Follow me on social media. Tell me what you think of this new layout. Tell me what I should do next. Watch my Twitch streams every Thursday at 7.